Welcome to class, everybody.
Hello.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm Facebook friends with a lot of you all. I don't know if you read my latest post, but this is my 7th time coming over here. And there's something about being here and standing with you all to protect Mauna Kea that draws me here. I've been involved in civil rights since I was a teenager. But what I told my uncles I would do today is talk a little bit about Kapaloha and the law. But before I do that, I kind of want to let you know a little bit about how I got here and why this is special to me. I was born, if you don't mind, give me about 10 minutes to tell you my background, okay? I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. My mother had me, obviously, when I was born in a mental institution. My mother was Italian. My father was black. And when my mother's family found out that she got pregnant by a black man, her oldest brother broke her collarbone at the table and they put her into a mental hospital. My mother was Catholic. And back then they still don't believe in abortions. And they would either send the ladies down south to have babies or put them away. And so I was born in a mental hospital. Then I was placed into an orphanage until I was 2 years old. I was adopted after that point into a family where everybody in the family was dark-skinned African American. And so, and I tell my students this, even from a young age, I just felt like I didn't belong. I mean, I could sit in classrooms or even be in church and just feel like everybody else seems to understand what life is about, right? You seem to really get what's going on, but for whatever reason, I felt apart from and not a part of, right? And it was almost like I had this hole in my soul. And so I would walk around not feeling a part of anything, but always pretending to be connected, always pretending to be like I know what's going on. You know what I mean? My daddy was an alcoholic, and he would come home at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I knew if I was going to get beat up by him, by the way his car and the tires would squeal in the driveway, and the way he would come in. And he would pull me out of bed, and he would be drinking, and he'd say things like, why'd you get in trouble at school? And I would say, I don't know why I got in trouble. He said, well, if you don't know, who knows? And then he would beat me to the point with an extension cord till I would be bleeding. And I didn't see my father as a problem. I didn't see my father as the alcoholic. What I saw was that maybe if I played football and got really good at it the way he used to be good, maybe my father would love me enough not to beat me like this. Maybe if I get good in school, he would love me enough not to beat like this. And so anyway, long story short, even from that young age, I really did think that with this hole in my soul, that I could fill it by grabbing things from the outside to fill it on the inside. That somehow if I go to school and get an education and become somebody, if I become a lawyer and make a lot of money, then I would feel better in here. And so I drove myself to become an attorney. I grew up in a place that was considered the ghetto, right? And so I saw my first man killed when I was 16, and it was just, and I loved the streets. I just loved the streets. But I went on to college. I met my wife in high school, went on to college, got her pregnant. I was playing football after she got pregnant. I stopped playing football, we got married, and I'm still trying to become somebody to fill this hole in my soul. I eventually became a lawyer, and I was working for a very large firm. I was doing corporate law, and I always wanted to do criminal law. That's all I wanted to do. But everybody kept telling me in law school that the criminal lawyers don't make no money, right? They broke. If you want to make a lot of money, you got to do corporate law. And so I said, well, okay, even if I'm doing something I don't want to do, at least I'll be making a lot of money, I'll be happy. And so I got hired at the largest law firm in the city of Cincinnati doing corporate law. And after 4 years, I had a big house, I had a nice car, I had a Porsche. I'm under 30 years old, making a ton of money. And if you would have came up to me and you saw me in downtown Cincinnati, you would have said, man, you got it made. And how do I tell you that you know what, I got everything I ever wanted in my life, and I still feel an emptiness in my soul. How do I tell you that some nights I go to bed thinking that my life is pretty good, and I wake up in the morning and I'm depressed, and ain't nothing happening in between? That I can wake up some mornings after having a great night and think, you know what, why am I here? What is life about? I don't tell you those things. What I tell you is I'm doing fine. I don't tell you that somehow there's something missing. I don't know what it is. I don't know it's spiritual. And so anyway, I left that law firm, and I tell my students this. Mark Twain said it best. He said the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. Why you're here. And it gets back to why I like being here. Right? When I come here to this place, to this very spiritual place, to me it's almost like this is what human beings are meant to be here for. The way we treat each other, the way we respect each other, the way that we help each other, the way, I mean, I've been in protests since, like I said, since I was a teenager. I've been in ones that have erupted to riots, right? But this is different. And so I didn't know anything about Kapalo. I'll get into what I'm going to talk about now, because that's what you all came to hear. But I wanted you to know, because a lot of people don't know who I am, and I wanted you to know what my connection is to you all. I eventually became a very good criminal defense lawyer. I also did a lot of civil rights cases, the police shooting cases and stuff like that you see on the mainland. I used to do a lot of those, and a lot of criminal defense for people. 25% of the cases I did were for people that couldn't afford it. Some of my most famous clients, I represented, and y'all remember Deion Sanders? Yeah, Google it. I represented Deion Sanders when he got arrested coming out the Cincinnati Red Stadium. Right? I represented, anybody remember Peter? The young ones don't know Peter Frampton. Any of y'all know Peter Frampton?
Baby, I love you.
Yeah, Peter Frampton got arrested with it, you know, and I'm not saying that to brag because, again, I got addicted to painkillers. A lot of y'all know that part of my story. I got addicted to painkillers. I ended up going to prison. Right? People ask me, how'd you get to Hawaii? I said, I did a lot of drugs, but here's what happened. You do a lot of drugs, you can go to Hawaii too. But so, because, you know, like I said, it wasn't until I had to start learning how to live that spiritual life. And I think that's what we're all here about. And so, you know what? My spirituality may not be the same as yours, but my right to defend yours is exactly the same. And you can't come here and not feel something spiritual about this place. I don't care who you are. And to come here and know it's spiritual, and then to leave like the governor did, and then to leave like President Lawson did, and act like you ain't felt it. And I truly feel sorry for him, because at that point you're lying to yourself. And I did that for many years. Right? Knowing, because I tell my students, they say, I can teach you law. I can teach you law all day long. What I can't teach you is justice. See, justice is a matter of the heart. Justice is something that I feel deep in my soul. No matter what else, no matter what you're telling me out your mouth, deep down in my heart, I know what you're doing is wrong. And so you can tell me this is legal. Like they told us segregation was legal. Like they said the women's right to vote, not to get the right to vote, was legal. But there's something deep down inside in the core of your soul, you know it's not just. And when you know something ain't just, you have a duty to stand up. And I tell my students this all the time. You're going to get clients that come into your office and tell your story, and you're going to look at the Hawaii law or the U.S. law, and you're going to say there's nothing I can do for you. And you're going to know in your heart what's going on with them is unjust. When they arrested the component over there and said, you blocking the road. And we're going to declare an emergency order. We being the governor for blocking the road. And you don't even know who on the road. So you're going to tell me that you can convict me beyond a reasonable doubt for blocking the road that you can't even figure out if you own it. I mean, really. But I'm the criminal.
Amen.
You understand? And so again, so what you tell me the law is, and what I feel in my heart is two different things. And there's a certain And the reason why when we used to get into civil disobedience, is because whatever laws was going on wasn't just. And people would tell us all the time, y'all troublemakers, why don't you just sit down and talk to people? And we engaged in nonviolent civil disobedience. Right? Not only protesting, we're doing economic boycotts, we're doing all this stuff. Right? And people would say that you're troublemakers, y'all causing all these problems. And the biggest thing was, you know, I didn't, like I said, we called it just being nonviolent, but this is different. Kapaloha is different. The sister told me this morning it means being disciplined. But it's just more, it's also mean being respectful to one another, including your opponent. Right? When we was coming up with the police, we was like with NWA. Some of y'all don't know who NWA is. I can't say it here. I gotta wait till I get to my car and play it, but you know, so that's how we walk. Right? And so, and again, so I'm talking to a lot of my friends that's still in the civil rights movement on the mainland. I'm like, you know, you guys gotta fly over here. Take, you know, and come and see, right? Why this is so different and why it's effective. Because it's so spiritual. Because it's so spiritual. And again, so you got, you know, my mama used to tell me all the time, she's like, you know, especially around Christmas time, because she knew that they couldn't afford nothing for Christmas presents, so she'd say things like, you know, it's better to give than to receive. I'll be like, nah, man, you know, you saying that because you got an orange and an apple for us, you know what I'm saying? Everybody else getting Hot Wheels and stuff. I'm like, you give us this piece, right? Because to me, that type of economics didn't make any sense. How is it better for me to give you money than for me to receive it, right? But that spiritual law is different from man's law. And so, again, I can't explain, but when I come up here and I'm giving, I feel fulfilled, right? And for whatever reason, I'm receiving. That's just spiritual. Is it not? Is it not? Right? And that's what's different about this movement from the ones that I was involved in, because we was angry, and justifiably so. In 2001, Cincinnati had killed, within a 2-year period, the 15th unarmed black man. Right? And I represented the young man's mother, and she said, Mr. Lawson, I want you to take me down to City Hall. They're having a council meeting, and I want you to take me down there so I can ask the chief of police what did his officer say was the reason for shooting my son, who was unarmed, and all he had was a misdemeanor warrant for driving without a license. I want the answer. And so we went down there to City Hall, and it was crowded, right? And so it meant we wanted an answer. And what happened was it was all supposed to be nonviolent. It was. And so one of the pastors who was leading it, he whispers in my ear. He says, "Do you want me to lock the mayor and the chief in here?" And we want, because they wouldn't answer a question. So they said, "We can't answer that because it's under investigation." And so we said, "We ain't leaving till you answer it." She lost her son. She got one question. That's it. What was his reason? And then we out of here. And so we locked them in. So we in City Hall, and then the police in Cincinnati, they ride horses to move crowds. I don't know if y'all ever seen them, and them horses ain't nothing to play with. So they bring in horses, and they stand this high, and they train to go sideways, and they'll move a whole crowd. Yeah, so they surround the horses around. So finally, after 2 hours, they answer the question, and then we leave. Right? Like we promised. We let them go. We let the mayor out. We let the chief of police. Y'all free to go now. We let them go. And maybe an hour later, we get back to the Kapaloha. 4 or 5 out of thousands of people, young men, took Molotov cocktails and went to work. And the riots erupted. And at that point, we lost the high ground. At that point, we lost the high ground. It was 4 days of rioting. And the National Guard had to be called in. But it made national news back then. Now, you know, you saw what happened in Ferguson and stuff like that. And again, to me, when we talk about, because in these movements, at least in that movement, and all the ones we've been involved in, it was always the lawyers doing their job. And So if you ever watch this movie called Selma, you'll see with Dr. King, or if you study some of the stuff with Dr. Martin Luther King, you'll see a couple of preachers around him. One is Reverend Ralph Abernathy and Fred Shuttlesworth. Both of them moved to Cincinnati after Dr. King had been killed. They started churches there. So they used to train us, right? And they got statues of Fred Shuttlesworth in Alabama because that's where, in Birmingham, that's where he's from. But he lived in Cincinnati and trained us. But he would always tell me, because I was always out there protesting. He'd be like, look, man, Lawson, you the lawyer. Because see, I'd be down there wanting to get arrested with the Capone and stuff like that, right? He's like, no. He's like, look, we don't need our lawyer in jail with us. We need you to keep us out of jail. But what he was telling me, and I was mad, because I was a young lawyer back then. I wanted, so I'm like, no, Reverend, so right? So I'm young and full of fight, and I want to be out there and doing everything, the lawyer but he had to sit me down. He called me down to his church. He said, look, this is how this goes, man. We put on enough pressure in the media by showing how unjust we're being treated. And then the politicians and all those that are being affected will start calling these investors. The businesses that are being hurt from our boycotts, they will start calling the politicians and saying, you got to do something about these people. Give them whatever it is they need to stop this because we losing money, right? And so he said, that's how that works. Now your job is to be in the courtroom fighting the legal end on that battle. Let us do our job. And so, and again, and when you go back to the civil rights movement, you can see all the civil rights laws has changed. In fact, there's a Supreme Court case, 2 of them, named after Shuttlesworth. And Shuttlesworth was arrested. They used in Birmingham for protesting out in front of a place that wouldn't allow blacks to eat at the counter. And so they had these laws called no loitering laws. Have you ever heard of those? Where they say you can't stand. And they do that now. It depends on what neighborhood you're in. On Oahu, if you in Kahala, you can have kids standing around the 7-Eleven, they ain't gonna bother them. You go down the ward now, you got kids standing around 7-Eleven, the police may come out and say, hey, what you doing? Get up against the wall, let me pat you down, right? And so, or move on, and all that's unconstitutional. So there used to be these laws called no loitering laws, which means them signs out there, no standing. That was right? No standing, sitting, no breathing, seeing, eating, right? That's what those statutes were. Look it up. And so what they did was, while they out there protesting to stop desegregation, the police come and arrest them for no loitering and throw him in jail. And what Shuttlesworth argued all the way to the United States Supreme Court is, that law you're using is not to enforce loitering, it's to stop me from speaking. Them signs y'all got posted up out there ain't to stop people from parking illegally, because ain't no traffic being held up. So they ain't out there for what you for parking. They out there to deter free speech. And what the Supreme Court said is, you can't take a traffic law and use it to deter somebody's free speech or their right to freely assemble and protest. That's exactly what the state's trying to do, right? And so that's why the lawyers have to work in conjunction with the protectors, because all this changes through everybody's actions. And you guys have a bunch of lawyers that are volunteering and doing a great job. Because really, the big question for the Capunas that was arrested, that I would have proved beyond a reasonable doubt that you had jurisdiction to come over there and arrest me. Yeah. Right? And again, in criminal law, remember, y'all, even if you ain't have to go to law school to know this stuff, you've seen it on TV. Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecutor has to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Every element. And so you'll hear, right? Remember when you're watching TV and they'll say, can you tell me what county and state this occurred in? It occurred in Honolulu, Hawaii. Why are they asking that? Because the prosecution has to prove that they had jurisdiction to bring that case against you. Right? You go over to Honolulu and commit murder, and you come back over here, you can't be tried over here because over here ain't got jurisdiction. And so if you ain't got jurisdiction on that road, and you got to prove it, that's part of what the state has to prove, that we had jurisdiction to make the arrest. Now, if you lay down in your private driveway and wanted to block it, you just go home right now, just lay down across your driveway. Now, you're going to look crazy, right? And you blocking your driveway, and so some police, and he come up and arrest you. He ain't got jurisdiction to do that. That's your driveway, right? And so the only way you can have jurisdiction to do it is if you have the right to police it. And if you ain't got the right to police it, you ain't got the right to arrest me. And if you don't have the right to arrest me and you moved me, you kidnapped me. Really, that's what it is. Right? If you can't, ain't that what it is? Go take somebody right now, bind them up in some cuffs, and take them somewhere else. You're going to see the police. We're going to see you on the news, and it's going to be your mugshot saying kidnapping. Right?
Yes.
Right? And so these arguments become, so when I used to do these cases for we used to have fun, so we don't, I gotta tell y'all one case. All right, so let me tell you. So in Cincinnati, in 2001, this is how racist that place was. In 2001, the Ku Klux Klan, so every Christmas, you know how you see the Christmas tree on downtown Fountain Squares, on squares downtown, right, New York City and all that? Every Christmas, the city will put a Christmas tree up in downtown Fountain Square, right downtown. Big tree, you know, lights and stuff. So the Klan said, hey, we got our own religion. Y'all let Christians put up this tree, we want to put up our cross. And so then the city couldn't deny it because of free speech. So now you got the cross in 2001. And they said, now, not only want the cross up there, but we want to wear our hoods and our white gowns. So they said, okay, so now they on the square. And then the city had to pay for the police to protect them. And so they took the black police officers and had them protect the Klan. I'm not joking. We got the transcript. So I said, look, I had a radio show. So I get on the radio. I said, look here, y'all. It was called The Law with Lawson. So I get on the radio. I say, look here, y'all. I'm telling everybody, anybody get arrested trying to knock that cross down, I will represent for free. Right? And so one of the other guys he still has a talk show. So they go down there, and so they get arrested. And the Klan is calling them the N-word, everything. And so we go to trial. And so I got the officer on the stand, and I asked him, I said, look here, man, so that you were standing there as a police officer, you made these arrests. He's a black guy. He's like, yeah. And I said, now you heard the Klan, before my client tried to break the barricade and tear the cross down, which is what he was arrested for, you heard the Klan calling him the N-word over and over again. Then he's like, yeah. Now the judge was black, so I'll get to that in a minute. So I said, wasn't those fighting words? See, y'all heard that the First Amendment don't protect all speech. You all heard, you can't go in the theater and yell fire. So what speech is protected and what's not? How do you determine that? Right? The way it's determined is what's called fighting words. So if I go into a theater and I yell fire, it's going to make everybody get up like right now. It's going to cause a panic. Fighting words are words that when they're spoken, it's going to make the other person try to beat you up. That's how they determine that, fighting words, right? And so I'm asking them, didn't you hear that? And when they were calling these men the N-word, that's when the man jumped through. Right? So why didn't you arrest the Klan for disorderly conduct? Because that speech isn't protected. So he said, because the prosecutor told us at a meeting that the N-word wasn't a fighting word. Or the judge, that's what the judge said. The judge said, it's just, we call it. She said, what prosecutor told you that? And the cop looked over, he's still on the stand. He's like, Terry Cosgrove. Recess, get Terry Cosgrove in my courtroom right now. So she bring him down in the courtroom. You told these men that the N-word, it's not a fighting word? And he started stuttering. He's like, yeah, but we didn't think it was a fighting word. She's like, that's all I need to hear. And she's like, not guilty, right? I don't know why I'm telling that story on the fact that it's fun. But, as a lawyer doing cases for people, to me, not only are you doing what you know is just, right? But I love it. It was fun. So any questions? I'm just kind of rambling. My students will tell you that I like to rant.
Yeah, great story. Continue. So what about Kapu Aloha and Law?
Oh yeah, what story is that?
Kapu Aloha and the law.
Kapu Aloha and the law. Well, give me a question.
So, through your experience, do you think Kapu Aloha is effective? A lot more effective than other experiences you had in the mainland?
Yeah, his question is, do I think Kapu Aloha is effective or more effective than the way we did it? Yes, most definitely. I think the people. I'm not saying there's not a need for some of the protests that goes on the mainland, because there was sometimes the eruption is what got everybody's attention. And when we saw after the Rodney King verdict, when the riot, and the riots happened, and here it's different because what's being protected is what's spiritual. Here on the mainland, we're talking about the way the police interact with the community. We're talking about, and again, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, but we're talking about law. I can't explain why it's so different, other than the fact that here we're talking about something spiritual. And you can't fight something spiritual by doing something unspiritual. You can't protect something that's spiritual by doing stuff that's unspiritual. It's like, man, it just doesn't make sense. And so and that's why it's just hard to explain, for me to explain. I was asked to come over here initially by a young attorney by the name of Jeff Foster. He called me, said, so he flew me over several months ago. And that's when I came and met my uncles, right? That's when I became an uncle. It was like, okay, come over here, man. They showed me how to, anyway. So getting back to your question. So when we would do it, we were angry. I mean, we were angry, man. We would make caskets. We would have carpenters. We'd make caskets. We would have protests where we would have no more casket protests, and we'd be walking around the city with caskets on our back. But we were angry, and so it wasn't even showing our opposers any respect. I mean, it got ugly. So even when it didn't get violent, it got ugly. I can't, and this is more effective to me because you can't fight love, man. And you can try. I mean, really, you see what they doing, and as long as everybody remains in Kapu Aloha, it's easier to get the law changed. See, there was something when the Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation filed the suit for the brother to go up there and say, look at here, man, Governor, that emergency order is something you pulled out of your hat. Right? And you affecting our right to go worship on a mountain that we know is sacred, right? And so when they did that, it was what was going on here, I think, that also helped the judges in there, right? If people would have been over here acting the way, and being aggressive and all that outside of Kapu Aloha, it would have affected the way I think the judges would have ruled. And see what they're trying to do by cutting through the flag and talking about we don't know how to get into, right? But again, as long as, and so just, I'm on Oahu watching this, and I'm proud. I'm like, they're not being provoked. They're not falling for the okie. That's what they want. See, there's no way you can come and tell me that wasn't pre-planned when you already got your mask on.
Thank you. The only one.
Right? Which means that you already knew in your heart what you was up to was no good.
Right.
So you came with an intent to provoke, and everybody stood fast. And just from observing from Oahu, I think it brought everybody together. Young, old, everybody. Like, well, now we see the power and the strength that comes from not engaging, right? And the only time I get angry is when I take things personal, right? Because I can tell you right now, I can be very spiritual till I get out here on the highway and you get in front of me, you doing like 40 miles an hour and it say 60. I'm like, hey, man, right? But I had to ask myself, why am I getting angry? Because for whatever reason, I'm taking what he doing personal. He don't know I'm behind. He don't care. You know what I'm saying? He ain't thinking about me. But I'm taking it personal. And what they doing ain't personal. What they doing ain't personal. But again, going back, I think the sisters, you know, Kapalua and the law is the most powerful thing. And I've been around and done a lot of cases, man. I mean, like I said, y'all heard that part of my story. But before I got addicted, after I hurt my shoulder, I was listed as one of the top 3 criminal defense lawyers in the nation out of 100. Right? And so I did cases all over the United States, and I'm telling you, I have never seen anything this powerful. Because it ain't just about, it's about stuff that we can't explain, which makes it even, and we ain't supposed to know. All we know is if we do this, spirituality take care of the rest. I just got to do my part. I don't have to worry about anything else. I do my part here. The lawyers do their part down there. Right? If they come up here, okay, my part is, and they want to arrest, my part is not to resist. Right? Because you can't be charged with resisting arrest for doing nothing. Resisting arrest requires an active. You got to be, so they can't, if they arrest you, they used to do, we would have protests and people would get arrested. They'd be laying down, they wouldn't, so all we doing, we ain't helping, you got to carry us. Yeah. Right? Then that police would charge them with resisting arrest. And the whole argument is resisting arrest says that no person shall resist by force, right, any lawful arrest of himself or another. By force. Well, I ain't doing nothing. I just ain't helping you. Right? And so you can't, right, so you got to prove, you being the prosecutor, that I did something to resist. And once I start pulling back or pushing back, now I'm trying to use that force. That's why when you're being trained, that's why they're telling you. Right? You can lock arms, right? Because that ain't that, and you stay that way. Now when they come, you're not doing anything. You're right in the way you work. You're right in the position you have been in before they, right? All right? I'm not resisting your arrest. I ain't helping you. And that's not resisting. Right? And that remains in capital law, right? And then they got, and it becomes all effective. And now you got to know, and even if they do charge you, got to know that the lawyers are in court for you doing their job, which they're doing. And that's why this is, I mean, it's just a beautiful thing.
On the live stream, Paige asked a question about the legality, because you talk about the different counties and different laws, and the legality of bringing Honolulu police over here or Maui police over here.
Right, so my understanding is that there has to be some type of, I'm not going to say order, but some type of, I guess for lack of a better word, order, something like that. My understanding is, and again, Peter Olson's doing, that lawsuit's still pending. It hasn't been dismissed. There hasn't been a lot of press about it, but I think that they know that when they came over here without any authority, they didn't have any jurisdiction. And the reason why that's important is because the HPD can't come over here, Honolulu police can't come over here and enforce Big Island laws. They had not been sworn in to do that. They have no jurisdiction. And so the argument in the legal case is, if you wasn't brought over here properly and then deputized properly, what was you doing over here and why we got to pay for it? Right? Because if you had no jurisdiction to be over here, as a taxpayer, you was on vacation as far as I'm concerned. I ain't paying for that.
What's happening here with the state, what they're doing to Mauna Kea and all of us here, would you consider that an act of war? War crimes, maybe. War crimes. And if so, when does our Constitution kicks in to protect us?
Which you're talking about the Hawaii Constitution?
Yeah.
No, legally, underneath this law, the way it is now, they wouldn't consider it an act of war, right? But I think the jurisdictional issues, you know, when you get to court and the jurisdictional issues are argued. Because here's the deal, man. Look, if the government is saying to the telescope workers, we will let y'all come up here to do y'all job, and if they're telling beneficiaries of this land that you can't come up here to hunt, to make your living, then there's a denial of equal protection there, right? And equal protection is no state shall deny its citizens equal protection of the law. So the law protecting some of the citizens that they can go to work at the telescope place was telling other citizens and beneficiaries, for whatever reason, you can't go work if your work is hunting, or if you have a right to go hunt, or if you want to go pray. So how do you make that distinction, government? How do you say it's okay for those employees to go up there to work on a telescope, but we can't go up there? Tell me how you make, under the law, and we're all supposed to be treated equal, how are you making that distinction? What's the basis, right? And so the lawsuit says in the civil rights area is you got to come up with, especially when it comes to race or culture, you got to come up with a narrowly tailored reason. It can't just be because we're afraid, right? It can't be. But if you're going to let somebody else go to work, give me a reason why they can't go. And they can't. And again, you know, like I said, I imagine suits are being worked on now on that issue. Again, and that is separate from the Kapaloha and the stance right there, right? And that's why I say they all work in conjunction. But they're still kind of separate things, you know what I mean?
Ken, I got a question.
She had one.
So I'm curious what you think about the strategy of mass arrest as effective.
Yeah, especially the most effective thing is the Kapuna getting arrested.
And then I'm wondering, when the Kapuna go to court and that case is seen, is that road, you know, who owns it, going to be the basis of that defense?
I would imagine that, you know, I haven't talked to the lawyers, but I know they got good ones. I'd imagine that, because if ethically, a lawyer has a duty to zealously represent their client, right? And so again, if there's an argument that I can make on behalf of my client, that can lead to a verdict of not guilty, then I can. Now some clients may say, I don't want to argue that. I don't want to argue, right? And so then the lawyer has to submit to that. So it's going to be, you know. But yeah, I believe they'll make it. I believe they'll make it. But I want to go back to, that's another thing that's different about this whole movement. You got the elders saying, you know what? This is it. This is it. Right? And I think to me, in all the movements I've been in, it's been the young folks, right? And in fact, the elders we ain't going down there with which, hey, you know, y'all got them, right? Here, that's why I say it's more about, it's spiritual. It's cultural, it's spiritual, and it's just like, you know what? We mean business, right? We just gonna sit here and let it happen. And I think, again, that gets plastered around the world. And then the investors will start telling TMT and everybody, hey, y'all need to go to Canary. Because this ain't, right? That's the whole purpose. And that's the reason why we get back to Kapaloha and the law. And that's why the strength comes from maintaining that Kapaloha, because once somebody goes off, that image disappears. And the image that they've been trying to talk about reappears. And then everybody sits back and says, okay, now I see why, yeah, they need to guard up there. You see how they act, right? And it feeds right into it. And so, you know, and the hardest part that we used to have to struggle, even I as a man, see, when it came to stuff like this, they would leave your ego at the door. You can't be up in there, you know, shuttles, hey, leave your ego at the door. If you're going to be involved in nonviolent, they would tell us. We'd go to a church, right? So we didn't have nothing like this. We would have to, you know, plan our protest, then we go out there. So old man Shuttleworth, they be down there, so, you know, and I was young too, and I'm like, oh man, come on, right? But it was dead serious. If you can't maintain this, that's fine. We can find something else for you to do. We want you to be of use to us. But if you're going to be here on the front line, and so we would have training sessions just like you do and stuff like that. And that happened, you saw it in the civil rights movement. The students that would go from colleges and go down south and sit in at the countertops. They all had that training. You know, but again, all this stuff is, I mean, it's just beautiful. But yeah. I'm sorry, bro.
And I got a question. So, where the road is, it's all on Department of Hawaiian Homeland. So me as a homesteader, if I get arrested, do I have a good case that I'm against the fake state of saying that, you know, I get every right for be on top homestead land, being I'm a homesteader?
Yeah, I think because when you bring up the argument that they get to go up there, I mean, if you're the beneficiary that has a right to be on that land, right? And they just work up there. Who has more of a right to be there? Who got more of a right to be there? I mean, come on, man. But y'all get to go up? And because I'm Native Hawaiian, I can't go. Why? Why? Somebody got to answer that, right? And they had to answer that in court.
So Ken, if the Department of Hawaiian Homes have proof of ownership of that land that we're on that road, and the head of the Department of Hawaiian Homes asked for us to get arrested, is that on criminal charge on his part?
You're trying to get me in trouble, man.
No. No, why I'm asking that?
Let me slide Ken's neck out there a little bit further.
No, why I'm asking that is because...
Hey, Jimmy. No, honestly, I don't know.
You want to stand there? So
I thought they was my uncles. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. That may have to. That's more of a political process in how that person stays in leadership or not.
So, if we are gonna get arrested, okay? And if we get arrested on our own property, after this case goes to court, what happens to our criminal record for being arrested? Would that be like wiped off of our record, or
if you get arrested, you go to court, and let's say you win on a jurisdictional argument that they can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So let's say the whole argument is you say we own it, the Department of Homeland owns it, state doesn't, but no one's really sure. Even then, you should win on a criminal case because you have to prove beyond, you being the state of Hawaii has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they had jurisdiction. And that's my whole point. They really don't know. You know how we know they don't know? Because about 2 weeks ago, they came out with this memo from the Attorney General and everybody else explaining why they think they got jurisdiction. When have you ever seen anybody do that? So you got to clarify to the public why you think you got jurisdiction. This is after you made the arrest. So if you clarifying it afterwards, how do you know that we knew that whose jurisdiction it was beforehand? But going to your point, so if you are found not guilty, then you can have the arrest expunged.
How can they arrest us if the road is closed?
That's another point. Yeah, see, I talked about that one my first day up here because, no, when the emergency order came through, because to me it's like you, he does the emergency order. So how do you obstruct a road that's closed? I mean, really, see, as a lawyer, you ain't got to make this complicated, right? Because it ain't. It really ain't. You got me charged with obstructing the road that ain't open. Right? How do you know that if a truck came up there that I wouldn't have moved? Right? So right now, I'm just sitting in the middle of the road, obstructing nothing. Go out there in the middle of the night and just sit there, like, you know, and ain't no cars coming. You ain't obstructing nothing. Right? And then if you see one coming and you got up and you moved, are you obstructing?
No.
All right. And so if you're going to arrest me and the road closed and ain't nothing came, you don't know if I was going to move it. Now, I ain't going to move, but you don't know that. So in other words, you arrested me prematurely. We back to you kidnapping me again. How do we keep getting back to you being a kidnapper?
But then can't they just bring in a car and then be like, okay, road
Yeah,
trip,
then they can, but that ain't what they did.
But if they did do that, then they actually.
If they did, then you blocking the road. But say, look, part of this is like, part of this, understand, and that's what Shuttlesworth said. He said, look here, part of it is that you know that you violating the law. And you willing to violate the law for a higher law. And so there were some cases, and again, I keep bringing up his name, but he played an important part in my life. There's some cases that Shuttlesworth said, look, we ain't fighting that. We know that we was wrong. But we know what we fighting for is a higher law. And so we know right then that we want to get arrested, that we violating the law. We violating the law, so you understand that what you're doing to us is wrong. So we going to court, we in on our plea, we guilty. And we're going to go back out and do it again, right? And so when you get to that point where you know, right, and everything's still kind of muddy right there, right? But that's part of the sacrifice of civil disobedience. Because what you're saying is, hey, I'm going to violate this law to change it, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you would call this unlawful, but isn't it kind of like prejudicial for the government to be spending all of this money on law enforcement when anybody else, if you have a problem, you call 911. So why do we have 24-hour services instead of them calling 911?
Not only that, but that's the big. So I was working behind the scenes with some of the Native Hawaiian lawyers after that emergency order was filed, and the whole big thing was, how's this an emergency? Yeah. I mean, what is? Right, it's the same thing. This is the safest place on the island to be. There's a lot of other places you probably, be looking out for your car, your purse, and it ain't here. Right? It's not here. So the whole question is, why are we paying for you to be up here? You're up here to intimidate us. You're up here to be a show of force. The law school sent around, the university sent around these waivers. Now I can go and to teach anywhere on this island to the community that I want to in the area of criminal law. Right? They pay for that. They tell me that I can't use tuition funds or state funds to come here and teach on here. That's what they told me. That ain't what, but I'm here teaching. Right? But think about it. Right? Part of my job as a professor is to teach law to the community, to help you better understand certain things. That's part of my job working for a public institution. Where am I more needed now on this whole island, in this whole state than here? And for you to tell our students that they got to sign a waiver, that if anything happens to them, it's a waiver going around that the students want to come over here and take a class. That they got to sign a waiver saying that if anything happens, the university's not responsible. Now we got students that get paid to go up there and study the volcano, which could be pretty hazardous, I guess. I don't know. I ain't never been. Right? Or, in oceanography, I know all these places around, they don't have to sign no waiver. Right? We sent students down to the border when Trump declared the border in Texas an emergency and paid for faculty to go down there too to help, which they should have. But you saying that we can't use state funds to come here? Now y'all talking to the wrong one. And I mean that, I say, don't threaten me. I'm not talking to you. You know what I mean? Put a camera at. Don't threaten me. You know what I'm saying? Because that's not what we about. That's not what we about.
Ew. I get It's good, brother.
All you want to do, I'm already in enough trouble now. He broadcasting this all over.
No. Why I like ask this question is just because not to have fear in the people that is going to get arrested. If we do get arrested, end results, can the people get arrested, file a class action suit against, who would we file a class action suit against being falsely arrested?
The state of Hawaii, the police, and you would file it in federal court. We did that all the time. All of it, I mean, we did that. So, you know, in all the civil rights cases I did, even if it wasn't police misconduct by shooting, you know, they would arrest people without probable cause, racial profiling, all that stuff happened, man. Especially around protests. You know, and so again, the civil rights lawsuit, Fourth Amendment violation. What's the Fourth Amendment violation? Remember, Fourth Amendment on the U.S. Constitution is that no warrant, shall issue but upon probable cause. That no arrest shall be made but upon probable cause. And if they had them other brothers and sisters chained, the ones that was chained down there, right? They had them chained down for all them hours and told them they was under arrest and the police is coming. 12 hours of police coming. I don't know what kind of cars they was driving. And then they finally, tell them, we're gonna unarrest you now. That's on tape. Now that ain't legal. How do you unarrest somebody? Right? That's civil rights violation. And so we don't have to argue with you about that up there. We can argue with you about it in federal court. But see, people only do to you what you let them do. And so, and again, man, some of the federal civil rights lawsuits changes that kind of stuff, and they can get to the bottom of a lot of things.
Ken, sorry, brother. If Kalani Akea Wilson asked you, martial law is declared, how did things change?
Oh yeah, so we had that. So the governor declared that in Ohio, and so a curfew be issued. So when the riots erupted there, they instituted, the governor instituted, I guess you call it martial, whatever it was. So it was martial law. National Guard was called out. There was curfews. You couldn't be on the street unless you was going to and from your job. You had to be able to show you was going to the job. The only people they were stopping was black folks. They wasn't stopping nobody else. And so we fought that too in federal court and argued that the curfew was a civil rights violation, and they put a stop to that. But yeah, so all that. So the governor at that point can create certain laws and conditions, right, for the safety of the community. The question is going to be, is he going to do it the same way he did this crazy emergency order? Because you notice right before the hearing he dismissed it. They knew they weren't going to win. They knew they weren't going to win.
Is there a statute of limitation on land swapping? I mean, it's been 20-somewhat years. We don't want to swap, right?
Yeah, that I don't know, because that's property law.
Because I know Iggy probably pushing it.
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah. Murders and crimes, I'm your man. Property.
They're killing us up there.
So with the latest findings that we see on social media of the governor and he's handling this money and stuff like that, would that be considered organized crimes?
From what I see right now, that needs to be investigated further. Because right there's prima facie evidence that there could be a conflict, right? And so that needs to be looked at. Again, because justice has to appear to be just. And if you pushing this, no matter what, for whatever reason, Governor, right? And there may be a conflict there, we need to know. We need to know. Because the question is, what's the motive? What's your motive? All right, one last question.
If there has been conflicts in the past, like perhaps a conflict of interest regarding Governor Ige's money, or even an EIS that's been officiated or accepted by Catherine K. Aloha, who is now imprisoned, is there some sort of defense against like a faulty leadership and their decisions in the past? Is there something there?
That's more of in the political realm.
Is there some sort of law in the political realm that we can play there? You mean
like impeachment or something like that? But as far as like legal responsibility, that I don't know the answer to. I'm not going to, I know, I tell my students this, as lawyers, you want to know everything, right? So, my kids say, they're like, how come you don't know? You're supposed to know. I don't know. So sometimes I just don't know.
just to tag onto that, as far as any violations of criminality or constitutional violations in particular is my question. What sort of constitutional violations can stand? Because that definitely goes forth in like a court that you could stand as like a defense. Is that correct?
When you say what constitution, you're talking about just in general what constitutional, or
Yeah, I mean, you had mentioned the Fourth Amendment is one of them. The First Amendment, perhaps.
First Amendment, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, right? The Fourth Amendment, lack of probable cause to arrest. Then you have the 14th Amendment, denial of equal protection and due process.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so you would allege those and maybe others in your civil rights lawsuit to demonstrate that the state's violating.
And does a civil rights lawsuit have to be like a what's the term you use, Uncle? Class action style, or can that be individual?
Start off with 1 or 2 people. Like the one we had started off with like 4 people, and then I turned. So we did a class action civil rights lawsuit in Cincinnati in 2000. We signed it in 2003. Back then, the U.S. Attorney General was John Ashcroft. He came all the way from Washington and signed, because it's still a historic agreement on the way the police should interact with the community. And so it received national attention, but we turned it into a class action lawsuit after about we had 4 or 5 people at the beginning, and then we turned it into a class action lawsuit. So that can't happen. And again, and all those issues that we're talking about are part of that. The jurisdictional issue, who owns this stuff, all this stuff is part of that. Because what you're saying is, look, we need to get this straight, and the state court ain't doing it. There's certain violations that's happened. Even though they said it's okay to build that up there, there's a lot of stuff that's going on that ain't right. And these things that aren't right violate our civil rights. And because so we're coming over here to try to find justice through the mechanism of a civil rights class action lawsuit. All right. Hey, thanks everybody.